Dad, I can't kill dragons.
But you will.
I'm a Viking. I'm a Viking!
Hi, Dean.
Hello.
Now, your journey with How to Train Your Dragon goes back a long way, but so does mine. So I'm going to start really self-indulgent and show you a photo. These are my qualifications for this interview.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing. How old were you here?
Probably 6 or 7.
Wow.
Sort of lounging across some tube seats.
That's great. So you started with the books.
Started with the books, yeah. And I thought, sort of, aside from being just powerfully self-indulgent to show you how cute I was, I thought it would be really nice to start by talking about that very underappreciated art form that is adaptation. You know, I mean, obviously I was deeply into these books as a little kid, and I remember when I was about 10 when the first film came out, actually being quite skeptical before I saw it and going, well, this looks quite different to what I'm
and rightly
expecting.
so, yeah.
And that's what you did. Now I think for the better. So I thought it would be really fun to start by talking about coming in with Chris Sanders on that first film and transforming it into what we have now.
Sure. I mean, it was interesting because when we talk about adaptation, this is almost like a special situation where they had acquired the rights to Cressida Cowell's books, they being DreamWorks, and they spent 2 years trying to do a very faithful adaptation of that first book. So they had several iterations of a working model of the whole movie. They were even animating it. And it was quite true to Cressida's story. And eventually the CEO of DreamWorks said, stop. The story's too young and it's too small for the budget that it's going to take to put this movie.
The books.
So we need a broader audience, and so stopped the presses. And they replaced the writer and director with Chris Sanders and I. And on day one, Jeffrey said, keep the spirit of the book. This is about the son of a chief who can't do things right, and he and his dragon changed the world. He said, but we need a new story, and so I encourage you to depart from the books, keep the names, keep elements, but for the most part, we need a new story that's going to deliver. And he gave us three mandates. He said, I want a father and a son story, I want a big David and Goliath ending, and I want a Harry Potter tone. And he said, aside from that, you're free to invent. And so that meant that Chris Sanders and I were thinking, well, the books have essentially 2 relationships going on with dragons. There are Vikings who raise dragons to do tricks and whatnot. So they're living amongst dragons like cowboys and horses. And then there are confrontations with dragons. Like there's a big fight with a dragon at the end of the movie. So you have the humans versus the dragon. We should pick a side. And we thought, well, if the idea is like, what's the big fantasy adventure story? Well, maybe it's about the first Viking to take a chance and befriend an enemy dragon and learn things about dragons that changes their world forever. And if he's going to take a chance on an enemy dragon, it should be an impressive dragon. So Toothless in the books is, he's about the size of a dog, he talks, he's small. But we sort of reinvented the idea of Toothless to be this creature that everyone is fearful of. They've never seen it. They've felt its attack. And so when you come upon Toothless, he is terrifying, and yet you realize pretty quickly, oh, he's just a giant cat. And so he embodies a lot of the qualities of your pets. So we wanted to make him big enough that Hiccup could fly on the back of him, could co-pilot him because he was damaged. And that just led us down a different path for the story.
Yeah, I think the untethering from the very literal details of what you're trying to adapt and instead focusing on the spirit of what you're adapting frees you up to make something so cinematic. And something I really notice about those films now is how much of a live-action sensibility they actually have from the beginning. I mean, you brought in Roger Deakins as a consulting cinematographer, legendary cinematographer. It really strikes me now how mobile the camera is for that time as well. Was that always something that was in mind for you?
I think from the start we thought, in order for this story to work, we have to believe that you can get hurt. If you fall off of a dragon, you're not going to bounce like a typical cartoon. If you get in the way of dragon fire, you're not simply going to have a little bit of soot on your face. Like, you could get burned and die. And if you believe that people can lose limbs and can die in this world, it increases the peril, it increases the heroism. And that's why we leaned into a live-action aesthetic. Like, let's move away from cartoony convention and into something that feels gritty and real and changeable weather and texture, and that was why we invited Roger Deakins into the mix to give us a little bit of that feeling.
You make those 3 wonderful films. You get to go through this journey of technology evolving, and there are new things you can bring in for each one. And then we come to now. I mean, being approached for this adaptation, what was your immediate first gut sort of feeling? I mean, are you raring to jump back into the world? Is there some trepidation? Is there a bit of nervousness around that? How did you feel at the beginning?
Well, when I finished How to Train Your Dragon 3, I thought I had put a period on the end of that sentence. It was a coming of age, it was a complete story, and then I was going to move on to different worlds, different characters, different stories. And I did so for several years, writing new stories and setting them up and writing scripts. None of them were getting made. They were all big and expensive. And then, ironically, I got a phone call from Universal saying, we're kicking the tires on this idea of doing a live-action reimagining of How to Train Your Dragon. And I think my response was twofold. One was a very protective one, and I thought, I don't want to see somebody else's version of this. If you're going to do this, then let me be the steward of it, because I know the characters and I know the heart and I know the fandom, and so I want to make sure that we present something that is not going to try to replace the animated movie, but maybe offer a different view of it. And then the other side of it was just I immediately started to see the potential of, okay, now we could really lean into a live-action aesthetic and make it very immersive and a little more mature as well, like and develop the mythology a bit more and lean into characters that were perhaps a bit underserved out of time constraints in the animated movie.
It was a real time crunch, that first one. Were there things immediately that you thought, oh, now I can go back, I can explore this, and I can expand on this? Did you have like a little shopping list?
A couple, yes. One of the first ones was I thought, well, now we can explain why these warriors were on this island. Where did they come from? Why were they there? Why didn't they leave when they realized it was beset by dragons? And it gave us an opportunity to kind of explore this idea. We know that Vikings traveled far and wide. And what if dragons were a problem everywhere they went? And so they gathered the best dragon-fighting warriors from everywhere, kind of a task force. And they came to this island because they knew it was within spitting distance of a key dragon's nest. But here they are generations later, and they still haven't found it. And then there were other things, like I love Astrid as a character, but I felt I wanted to know more about her, and we didn't have the screen time to really do it in the animated movie. So, what if she is a descendant of one of these other tribes that came together, and she's had to work her way up for the notoriety she now enjoys as the best of the young generation. And so she has a bit of resentment for Hiccup, who just coasts by as the son of the chief and doesn't apply himself. And it create this kind of tension between the two of them that will evolve when she comes to realize he's onto something here with what he's discovered about Toothless and dragons in general. It gives her something to sacrifice when she decides to side with him and be sort of toppled from her position, like as the apple of Stoic's eye. So
I love the time and the focus that the film gives to those character relationships is really great. And I mean, what a showcase for your cast. You have a wonderful cast for this film. That younger Viking generation is so wonderful. Mason and Nico, such a good duo. Was it difficult to find those right fits for the characters? Were you looking for a long time?
Strangely, they kind of found themselves. So I credit all of this to Lucy Bevan. She was our casting director, and she brought us just a huge swath of great potential Hiccups, potential Astrids, every character. And we would narrow them down by simply putting them together in combinations and seeing who played really well off of one another. And we'd give them scenes and dialogue, and it was so much of it was about like their physical mannerisms. It was the space between lines. Were they listening to one another, and where the chemistry really kind of came alive. And with Mason and Nico, they just kept rising to the top, in part because I think they grew up with the movies, and so these were part of their childhood. They related to the characters, and they were also just very intuitive, talented actors who played very well off of one another.
Yeah, it's great. It's so nice to watch the film knowing there's more to come as well and see where those relationships go and see them grow. Yeah. But how cool to have Gerard Butler back as Stoick the Vast. Yes. I mean, he is that character. And I think there was a point where his schedule was maybe a little in doubt.
That's true, yeah. It seemed like a no-brainer from the start that we would well, at least we can go to Jerry. We know that's that's going to work. And then it turned out that he had back-to-back movies, and he wasn't going to be able to do it. But because of the actors' strike and how that messed with a lot of schedules, there was an 8-week window that opened up coming out of the strike that allowed him to join us. And it seems like it was meant to be, but for a while there, we were kind of scratching our heads thinking, who else could fill those boots?
Yeah, who else can fill out that beard?
Yeah.
It's okay. I won't hurt you.
I mean, you have this other whole set of characters to bring to life, which are the dragons. And it's kind of an interesting balance when you're bringing these very fantastical creatures into a live-action world. But obviously, they should still feel very magical and fresh and exciting, but they also have to look real within the setting. How did you approach finding that sort of new, balancing the design from the original films, the look of the live-action? What was the kind of vision that you had for how dragons would look and behave in this setting?
Well, the first conversation with the studio was about the dragons and how that would be the crux of this whole thing. If we didn't believe that the dragons were real and credible and of this world, then the whole thing would fall apart. So I said, we will make you the promise that our dragons will feel as credible as any dinosaur in Jurassic Park. But we have to manage to retain the personalities and the design cues. But everything that we love about the dragons from the animated movie needs to somehow be migrated into reality. So we decided to work backwards. And we thought of, if the dragons in the animated movie are stylized, simplified, exaggerated versions of the real animal, what did the real animal really look like? And that caused us to lean more into the animal references for each one. The crocodile for the Monstrous Nightmare, the Black Panther for Toothless, the hippo for the Gronkle, and the tropical bird for the Natter. So we really looked at the animals and studied their movement and their design, and then we tried to import as much of the silhouette and the traits and the personalities of the animated versions and find that perfect balance.
That's so cool, working backwards in that way. I couldn't possibly talk about this film and not talk about the score. I mean, John Powell's scoring for these films is absolutely marvelous. It's so beautiful. And I'm always thrilled by how much time and focus the films carve out for music to kind of take a front seat. What did you guys talk about sort of evolving and amplifying the score then for this film?
Well, John Powell was the first call I made. And I said, please talk me out of this if you think it's a bad idea. But he saw the same potential, which is if we can deliver a love letter to the fans in a nostalgic, hug of a movie, but also open it up to a whole new generation, then we will have served it well. And he said, if you're in, then I'm in. But he was tasked with the same challenge, which is, how do you take something that people know and love and add to it in ways that do feel additive? So you're not simply changing, nor are you omitting pieces that they will expect. And I think he did a great job of sort of expanding the richness and the scope in subtle ways to accommodate the expanded scope and adventure and feel of the live-action movie. And he added a few new pieces as well, like between the father and the son, the Hiccup and Stoick story has a whole new cue that plays through the movie in different iterations. And that adds a whole other narrative dimension, like a harmony, storytelling harmony to the mix that he's just such a master of, because he's a wonderful storyteller as well as being an amazing composer.
Oh, it's just, there's so much richness. I'm so excited for fans to get to come and discover this iteration of this world. I think it's so beautifully done.
Thank you.
And we always like to wrap up, because we're a cinema podcast, we're a cinema company. We love to talk about the cinema experience. I always cite How to Train Your Dragon as a very pivotal experience for little me. I was curious if you can recall any of the films that really sparked a love of film and filmmaking for you, particularly at a younger age.
Yeah, the whole thing ignited for me with Star Wars. And then especially Empire Strikes Back, because it took something that I saw once. I grew up poor, so if we went to the cinema, we saw a movie once, and I had to commit it to memory. But by the time I saw The Empire Strikes Back, it was everything I remembered that I loved about that story expanded in every direction. Richer characters, cooler costumes, more worlds, more peril, greater adventure, greater stakes. And so I think it ignited something in me with my little Star Wars figures and playing in my back garden, just a sense of like, I want to do this, I want to be part of this. And then I saw E.T., and that was another pivotal one, where it's like the richness of the wonder and the emotion and the bittersweetness of the parting at the end. That was something that was quite influential as well.
I wonder if you would go on to make a film with a beautiful emotional flight sequence. That would be crazy. Thank you, Dean. It's so great to meet you. Such a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you for watching Picture House Cinema's unique video content. Hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with our movie news, cast and crew interviews, highlights, trailers, and lots more.